You ever replay an argument in your head thinking, they'll realize they were wrong any minute now? Spoiler, they won't. Maybe it was a friend who betrayed your trust, a family member who crossed the line, or someone who hurt you and just moved on like nothing happened. Meanwhile, you're stuck, waiting for that magical moment when they'll have an epiphany, feel terrible, and finally say, hey, I was wrong. But here's the thing. Some people don't apologize, not because they're right, but because their ego can't handle being wrong. For them, admitting fault feels like losing. So instead, they double down, shift blame, or act like it never happened. And while you're waiting for an apology that may never come, they're out there living their life, completely unaffected. So what do? Do you keep waiting, keep hoping, keep refreshing your emotional inbox, looking for a message that was never sent? Or do you take your power back? In this video, we're breaking it all down. Why some people refuse to apologize, why waiting for it keeps you emotionally stuck, and, most importantly, how to move on without closure. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Some people would rather lose relationships than admit they were wrong. Sarah kept checking her phone, waiting for that one message, the apology that would finally make things right. Her best friend, Lisa, had thrown her under the bus in front of everyone at a party, making a joke at her expense that wasn't just embarrassing, it was straight up cruel. Lisa saw Sarah's face drop, heard the awkward silence, and what did she do? Laughed it off, took another sip of her drink, and moved on like nothing happened. But Sarah, she couldn't move on. She replayed the moment in her head, crafting the perfect texts she never sent. She even considered sending a casual, hey, that really hurt message. But deep down, she knew Lisa would either brush it off or somehow make herself the victim. Still, she kept hoping. It was like putting money into a vending machine that's out of order. She kept pressing buttons, waiting for something to drop, but all she got was disappointment. Maybe if she waited long enough, Lisa would realize her mistake, feel awful, and send a heartfelt apology. Except, no. That message was never coming. Waiting for an apology from someone who refuses to acknowledge their mistakes is like refreshing your inbox, hoping for an email that was never written. You can hit refresh 100 times, but all you're getting is a fresh dose of reality. So, if the apology isn't coming, how do you stop waiting for it? Closure isn't something you get, it's something you create. Waiting for someone else to hand it to you is like leaving your healing on their to-do list. Spoiler, it's not a priority for them. People who refuse to apologize aren't losing sleep over it. Meanwhile, you're replaying old conversations, crafting imaginary confrontations, and hoping they'll finally realize how much they hurt you. But all that waiting does is keep you stuck, emotionally parked in a space they've long vacated. So how do you create closure for yourself? First, accept the apology you wish they had the decency to give. Not for them, for you. A simple mental shift from I need them to own up to it to I accept that they won't can be freeing. Next, write the unsent letter. Say everything you need to say, every frustration, every disappointment, every you should have known better. Then delete it, burn it, or toss it in the ocean if you want dramatic flair. It's not about them reading it, it's about you releasing it. And finally, reclaim the narrative. What's the lesson? That some people will never be accountable, that you deserve better, that you're strong enough to move forward without their validation. Good. Take that lesson and run with it, because the best closure isn't words, it's walking away lighter. But what if the pain still lingers? That's where self-validation comes in. Their inability to say sorry isn't your inability to heal. It's easy to think that an apology would somehow make your feelings more real, like their acknowledgement would finally confirm that yes, what they did was wrong, and yes, you deserve to be upset, but your feelings were valid the moment you felt them. You don't need their stamp of approval to justify your pain. Self-validation is what breaks the cycle of emotional dependency. It's what allows you to recognize your experience as real and worthy, even if the person who hurt you refuses to admit it. How do you do that? Simple. Instead of waiting for them to say, "I shouldn't have done that," tell yourself, "That was unfair to me, and I have every right to feel hurt." Instead of hoping they'll acknowledge your perspective, remind yourself, "My experience is valid, even if they refuse to see it." Journaling helps. Write down what happened, how it made you feel, and what you wish they would say. Then say it to yourself. Talking to a friend who actually understands can also be a reality check. Sometimes you just need someone else to say, "Yeah, that was messed up," to remind you that you're not overreacting. And most importantly, let go of the idea that their recognition is what makes your pain legitimate. It never was. Of course, knowing this is one thing. Living it is another. So how do you emotionally detach when you've been hurt? Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not letting the situation own you. It's not about pretending something didn't hurt. It's about deciding it no longer gets front row seats in your mind. Think of it like muting someone on social media. You don't have to block them from existence, but you also don't need to hear every emotional notification they trigger. Their words, their actions, their refusal to apologize. They're still there, but you're no longer letting them interrupt your peace every 5 minutes. So how do you emotionally detach from an unresolved conflict? First, shift your focus from them to you. What do you need to feel better? If it's closure, give it to yourself. If it's validation, affirm your own experience. If it's peace, start creating it instead of waiting for them to hand it over. Second, recognize the difference between detachment and suppression. Detachment is accepting what happened without letting it control your emotions. Suppression is shoving it down and pretending it doesn't bother you, only for it to resurface later, usually at the worst possible time. And finally, when the memory comes up, and it will, remind yourself that you don't have to engage with it. You can acknowledge the thought, take a deep breath, and move on. No need to reopen old wounds just because your brain brought them up again. And finally, let's talk about forgiveness. Not for them, but for you. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's not about letting them off the hook, pretending it didn't hurt, or giving them a free pass to do it again. You don't forgive because they deserve peace. You forgive because you do. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a heavy suitcase everywhere you go. It slows you down, weighs you down, and half the time, the person who packed it for you isn't even thinking about it anymore. Meanwhile, you're the one lugging it around, exhausted. Forgiveness is the decision to put it down, not for them, but for you. So how do you start forgiving someone who never apologized? First, separate forgiveness from reconciliation. You can forgive and still choose never to let them back into your life. Forgiveness is about releasing the emotional burden, not about reopening doors that should stay closed. Second, rewrite the narrative. Instead of waiting for their remorse, decide what you need to move forward. Maybe it's journaling your final thoughts. Maybe it's saying, "I release this" every time the memory resurfaces. Or maybe it's simply reminding yourself that their behavior says everything about them and nothing about your worth. And finally, remind yourself that forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a practice. Some days you'll feel completely at peace. Other days, the resentment might creep back in. That's okay. Just keep choosing yourself over the grudge, one moment at a time. So, how do we tie all of this together? Remember that argument you've been replaying in your head, the one where you keep thinking, if they just admit they were wrong, I could finally move on. Yeah, that apology, it's probably not coming. But guess what? You don't need it to move on. Waiting for an apology is like waiting for closure from a door that was never yours to open. Some people will never give you the acknowledgement you deserve, not because you weren't worth it, but because they can't face their own shortcomings. That's their battle, not yours. Your peace doesn't have to be held hostage by their unwillingness to take responsibility. You create your own closure by validating your emotions, detaching from their actions, and choosing forgiveness, not to excuse them, but to free yourself. That means no more waiting, no more hoping they'll finally get it. No more refreshing the inbox of your past, looking for a message that was never written. Because the truth is, the message you're waiting for isn't coming. But your healing, that's already in your hands. Stay blessed.